Good morning, class. We are going to be starting Chapter 4 today. Chapter 4's focus is going to be decimals. As you can see from the lessons in Chapter 4, we are going to be introduced to decimals in 4.1. We will be comparing, ordering, estimating, and rounding decimals. We'll look at fraction decimal equivalents. And then finally, to finish off Chapter 4 with the last 4 lessons, we'll be adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing with decimals. If you turn to page 227 in lesson 4.1, we will be introduced to decimals. Learning targets for today are going to include understanding decimals as parts of a whole, representing decimals on a hundredths grid, writing decimals, and also representing decimals on a number line. Let's take a look at problem 1 on page 228, saying hello to decimals. Decimals are another way to show parts of a whole. A decimal is the number that is written in a system based on multiples of 10. You need to use a decimal point to separate the whole number and the decimal. For example, look at the decimal 3/10 shown below. Let's take a look at the two models. It says you can use tenths and hundredths grids to show the connection between fractions and decimals. You can also write equivalent forms of fractions and decimals. Take a look at the model on the left. This model is representing 30 hundredths, which is also equivalent to 30 over 100, written as a fraction, which is also equivalent to 0.30, written as a decimal. The model on the right is representing 3/10, or 3 over 10 written as a fraction, or 0.3 written as a decimal. So let's turn to the top of page 229 and take a look at number 2. We are going to practice now using some tenths and hundredths grids to show what some decimals can look like. So what I would like you to do is write a decimal that represents each shaded portion in the tenths or hundredths grid. Go ahead and do letters A, B, C, and D with your group members. So let's take a look at A through D. For letter A, you should have had 2/10 for your answer. Letter B, 5/10. Letter C, 4 hundredths. And letter D, 9 hundredths. Let's turn to page 231 and take a look at number 3 now. What I would like you to do is use the hundredths grid to represent each decimal, then write an equivalent fraction for each decimal. So go ahead and do A through D again with your group members. I'll give you a couple minutes. So here is what your grids could potentially look like. Yours may look a little different than mine. For letter A, I have 5 of those squares colored in. The decimal representation would be 0.05 and the fraction equivalent would be 5 over 100. For letter B, 75 squares colored in, 0.75 for the decimal and 75 over 100 for the fraction. For letter C, I have 20 of the squares colored in, 0.2 for the decimal and 20 over 100 for the fraction equivalent. And finally, for letter D, 22 of the squares colored in, 0.22 for the decimal and 22 over 100 for the fraction equivalent. Let's turn to page 232 and move on to problem number 2. In problem number 2, we are going to be writing decimals in expanded form and as a power of 10. Go ahead and turn to the top of page 233. Very important what you see up here at the top. When you write a decimal, you are writing a representation of a fraction with denominators of 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, etc. So keeping that statement in mind up at the top of the page, let's consider the decimals 6,702 and 8,451 ten thousandths. We want to be able to write this decimal in expanded form and we also want to be able to write this decimal using powers of 10. So if we take a look at the expanded form, we have our 6,000s, we have our 700s, there's nothing in my tens place, I have my 2 ones. When I go to the other side of the decimal, I have 8 tenths, I have 4 hundredths, 5 thousandths, and 1 10,000th. Same thing's going to go when I'm writing out using powers of 10, my 6,000s, my 700s, again nothing in my tens place, I have 2 ones, and I have 8 tenths, 4 hundredths, 5 thousandths, and 1 10,000th. So let's go ahead and turn to the top of page 234 and let's practice writing each decimal in expanded form and as a power of 10. Go ahead and do letter A and letter B with your group members. So if we take a look at letters A and B, for letter A we had 47 and 568 thousandths. For the expanded form, on the top line you should have 40 plus 7 plus 5 tenths plus 6 hundredths plus 8 thousandths. And if we write it out as powers of 10, we have 4 tens plus 7 ones plus 5 tenths plus 6 hundredths plus 9 thousandths. For letter B, our decimal is 52 and 479 thousandths. So in expanded form, it should look like 50 plus 2 plus 4 tenths plus 7 hundredths plus 9 thousandths. And written as powers of 10, you should have 5 tens plus 2 ones plus 4 tenths plus 7 hundredths plus 9 thousandths. Let's turn to the top of page 235, and what I would like you to do next with your group members is write each decimal in words for letters A, B, and C. If we take a look at letter A, I'm actually going to accept 2 answers for letter A. You could have 5 and 36 hundredths, or you could also have written down 5 and 360 thousandths. For letter B, you should have 27 hundredths, and for letter C, you should have 700 thousandths. Just as a side note, when you are writing decimals out in words, for the numbers 21 through 99, those are going to require hyphens. You can see that I've pointed out the number 36 and the number 27 when they are written out in words, that they do need to have a hyphen, so make sure that you mark that down. The last thing that we are going to do to finish up the lesson for today is take a look at number 4. We are going to be plotting a point on the number line to represent each decimal. So take a look at letters A through H, and I want you to plot a point on the number line to represent each of those decimals. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Go ahead. Hopefully when you plotted your points on the number line to represent each decimal, it was pretty close to what you see that I have here listed for each. For letter A, we should have 25 hundredths. Letter B, 1 and 38 hundredths. Letter C is 5 tenths. Letter D, 2 and 3 tenths. Letter E, 56 hundredths. Letter F, 2 and 92 hundredths. Letter G, 1 and 75 hundredths. And letter H, 1 and 1 tenth. That is it today for lesson 4.1. Please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.